Hi everybody, welcome back to Ms. Johnson's Read Aloud Time. We're going to continue reading from our story, The One and Only Ivan. So we just left off from a really sad part of the story, and right now we're just going to follow along and see kind of how Ivan and Ruby and Bob kind of navigate the sad things that are happening. We learned a little bit more about Ivan, so we're going to continue on with the story and see what happens next. Here we go, let's get started. The Temporary Human. It was Mac who pried open the gate, Mac who brought me in, and Mac who raised me like a human baby. I wore diapers, I drank from a bottle, I slept in human beds, I sat in human chairs, listened while human words swarmed around me like angry bees. Mac had a wife back then. Helen was quick to laugh, but quick to be angry too, especially when I broke something, which was often. Here is what I broke while I lived with Mac and Helen. 1 crib, 46 glasses, 7 lamps, 1 couch, 3 shower curtains, 3 shower curtain rods, 1 blender, 1 TV, 1 radio, 3 toes, my own. I broke the blender when I squeezed 3 tubs of toothpaste and a bottle of glue into it. I broke my toes attempting to swing from a lamp fixture on the ceiling. I broke 46 glasses. Well, it turns out there are many ways to break glasses. Every weekend, Mac and Helen took me on their convertible to a fast food restaurant where they ordered me french fries and strawberry cake. Mac loved to see the expression of the cashier's face when he drove up and said, "Can I have an extra ketchup for my kid?" I went to baseball games, to the grocery store, to a movie theater, even to the circus. They didn't have a gorilla. I rode a little motorcycle and blew out candles on a birthday cake. My life as a human was a glamorous one, although my parents' traditional sorts would not approve. There he is. Look, he's so cute. Looks like a little baby. Hunger. In my life as a human, I was well tended. I ate lettuce leaves with 1,000 Island dressing and caramel apples and popcorn with butter. My belly ballooned. But hunger, like food, comes in many shapes and colors. At night, lying alone in my pajamas, I felt hungry for the skilled touch of a grooming friend, for cheerful grunts of a play fight, and for easy safety of my nearby troop, forging through the shadows. Remember what happened to Tag? I told myself, don't think about the jungle. Still, sometimes I lay awake wishing for the warmth of another just like me, asleep in the night nest of tender prayer plant leaves. I liked having sips of soda poured into my mouth like a bubbling waterfall, but every now and then I longed to search for a tender stalk of arrow root, to feel the tease of mango just out of reach. Still life. One day, Helen came home with something large and flat, wrapped in brown paper. "Look what I brought today," she said excitedly as she tore off the paper. "A painting to go over the living room couch." "Fruit in a bowl," Max said with a shrug. "Big deal." "This is fine art. It's called Still Life," Helen said, "and I think it's lovely." I dashed over to examine the painting, marveling at the colors and shapes. "See?" said Max's wife. "Ivan likes it." "Ivan likes to roll up poop and throw it at squirrels," Max said. I couldn't even take my eyes off the apples and bananas and grapes in the picture. They looked too real. So inviting, so edible. I reached out to touch a grape, and Helen slapped my hand away. "Bad boy, Ivan, don't touch." She jerked her thumb to Mac. "Honey, go get a hammer and nail, would you?" While Mac and Helen were busy in the living room, I wandered into the kitchen. A cake covered in thick chocolate frosting sat on the counter. I like cake. I love it, in fact. But it wasn't eating I was thinking about. It was the painting. The frosting peaked and dipped like waves in a tiny pond. It looked rich and gooey, dark and smooth. It looked like mud. I scooped up a handful of frosting. I scooped up another. I headed to the refrigerator door. It was perfect, an empty, white, waiting canvas. The frosting wasn't as easy to work with as jungle mud. It was stickier and, of course, more tempting to eat. But I kept at it. I scraped off every last bit of the frosting. I may have eaten a little cake, too. I don't remember what I was trying to paint. A banana? Most likely. I suppose I knew I was going to get in trouble, but in that moment, I just didn't care. I wanted to make something, anything, the way I used to. I wanted to be an artist again. Punishment. I soon learned that humans can screech even louder than monkeys. After that, I was never allowed in the kitchen. Babies. Back in those days, the Big Top Mall was smaller. It had a pony ride, a wooden train, and a bustled around the parking lot, and a few bed-raggled parrots and a surly spider monkey. But when Mac brought me a baby gorilla dressed in a crisp tuxedo to the mall, everything changed. People came from far and wide to have their pictures taken with me. They brought me blocks and a toy guitar. They held me in their laps. Once I even held a baby in mine. She was small and slippery. Bubbles flowed from her lips. She squeezed my fingers. Her rear was puffy with padding. Her legs bowed like bent twigs. I made a face. She made a face. I grunted. She grunted. I was so afraid she would fall. I squeezed her tightly, and her mother yanked her away. I wonder if my mother would ever worried about dropping us. We always held on, but that's easier to do when your mother is furry. Human babies are an ugly lot, but their eyes are like our babies' eyes, too big for their faces and for the world. Beds. One day, after many weeks of loud talking, Helen packed a bag and slammed the front door and never came back. I don't know why. I never know the why of humans. That night, I slept with Mac in his bed. My old nests were woven of leaves and sticks and shaped like his bathtub. Cool green cocoons. Mac's bed, like mine, was flat, hot, without sticks or stars. Still, he made a sleeping sound like the rumble my father used to make when all was well, a sound from deep inside my belly. My place. Mac grew sullen. I grew bigger. I became what I was meant to be, too large for chairs, too large for hugs, too large for human life. I tried to stay calm, to move with dignity. I did my best to eat daintily, but human ways are hard to learn, especially when you're not a human. When I saw my new domain, I was thrilled, and who wouldn't have been? It had no furniture to break, no glass to smash, no toilets to drop Mac's keys into. It even had a tire swing. I was relieved to have my own place. Somehow, I didn't realize I'd be here quite so long. Now I drink Pepsi, eat old apples, watch reruns on TV, but many days I forget what I'm supposed to be. Am I a human? Am I a gorilla? Humans have so many words, more than they truly need. Still, they have no name for what I am. Here's this little tire swing. 9,876 days. Ruby is finally asleep. I watch her chest rise and fall. Bob, too, is snoring, but my mind is still racing. For perhaps the first time ever, I've been remembering. It's an odd story to remember, I have to admit. My story has a strange shape, a stunted beginning, an endless middle. I count all the days I've lived with humans. Gorillas count as well as anyone, although it's not particularly useful skill to have in the wild. I've forgotten how many things, and yet I always know precisely how many days I've been in my domain. I take one of the magic markers Julia gave me. I make an X, a small one, in my pointed jungle. I make more X's and more. I make an X for every day of my life as humans. My marks look like this. X, 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 X. The rest of my night, I mark the days, and when I'm done, my wall looks like this. And so on until there are 9,876 X's marking across my wall, like a parade of ugly insects. A visit. It's almost morning when I hear steps. It's Mac. He has a sharp smell. He weaves as he walks. He stands next to my domain. His eyes are red. He's staring at the window at the empty parking lot. Ivan, my man, he mumbles. Ivan. He presses his forehead against the glass. We've been through a lot, you and me. A new beginning. We don't see Mac for 2 days. When he returns, he doesn't talk about Stella. Mac says he's anxious to teach Ruby some new tricks. He says the billboard is bringing in more visitors. He says it's time for a new beginning. Hi, Danny. All afternoon into the evening, Mac works with Ruby. Ruby's feet are looped with rope so that she cannot run. A heavy chain hangs off her neck. Mac shows her Stella's ball, her pedestal, her stool. He introduces her to Snickers. When Ruby obeys, Mac gives her a cube of sugar or a bit of a dried apple. When she doesn't, he yells and kicks up the sawdust. When George and Julia arrive, Mac is still training Ruby. Julia sits on the bench and watches them. She draws a little, but mostly she keeps her eyes on Ruby. Bob watches too. He's hiding in the corner of my domain under not tag. It's raining outside and Bob does not like damp feet. Ruby trudges behind Mac, her head drooping. Endlessly they circle the ring. Sometimes Mac slaps her flank with his hand. Suddenly, Ruby jerks to a stop. Mac pulls the chain hard, but Ruby refuses to move. Come on, Ruby, Mac says, almost pleading. What is your problem? She's exhausted, I say to myself. That's the problem. Mac groans. Idiot elephant. Idiot human. Bob mutters. Walk, Ruby, I say, although I know she's too far away to hear me. Do what he says. Walk, Mac commands. Now. Ruby doesn't walk. She plops her rump on the sawdust floor. I think maybe she's tired, Julia says. Mac wipes his face with his forehead on the back of his arm. Yeah, I know, we're all tired. He pushes Ruby with his heel of the boot. She ignores him. George looks over from the food court where he is wiping off tables. Mac, he yells, maybe you should call it a day. I'll close up. All right, drive me crazy. Come on, I'm trying to read. Mac yanks at Ruby's chain. She's anchored as a tree trunk. He pulls hard and falls to his knees. This does it, Mac says. He pushes the sawdust off his jeans. I am through playing around. Great. Same here, friend. I'm so tired of you coming in here. Mac stomps off to his office. When he returns, he's carrying a long stick, the gleaming hook on its end and almost beautiful, like a silver moon. It's a claw stick. Mac pokes Ruby with a sharp point. Not hard, just a touch. I can tell he wants her to see how much it can hurt. I growl low in my throat. Ruby doesn't budge. She's a gray, unmoving boulder. She closes her eyes, and for a moment I wonder if she might have fallen asleep. I'm warning you, Mac said. He breathes out. He stares at the ceiling. Ruby makes a huffing sound. Fine, Mac says. You want to play it that way. He draws back with the claw stick. No, Julia cries. I'm not going to hurt her, Mac says. I just want to get her attention. Bob snarls. Mac swings. The hook slices through the air a few inches above Ruby's head. See why you don't want to mess with me, Mac says. He draws back with the claw stick again. Now move. Ruby jerks her head, flinging her trunk toward Mac. She makes a noise that sends the sawdust scattering. It makes my glass shiver. It is the most beautiful mad I've ever heard. Ruby's trunk slaps into Mac. I don't see exactly why she strikes him. Somewhere below his stomach, I think. And I know he must be uncomfortable because Mac drops the claw stick and falls down on the ground and curls it into a ball and howls like a baby. Direct hit, Bob said. All right, so that's the end of part 8. So we still got to hear a little more about Ivan's story, about how he lived as a human before he was in the Big Top Mall, which I found was really interesting. Max seems to be not doing very well. He's not a very likable character for me. Luckily, Ruby she's kind of starting to defend herself, and it sounds like Ivan's going to try helping her out too. So let's see what happens next. Thank you so much for watching this video. All right, bye everybody.